The rise of the top dogs. In a distant galaxy, far beyond the reach of any human eyes, a species of powerful and intelligent aliens ruled with an iron fist. They were known as the top dogs. For centuries, they had been the dominant force in the universe, their empire stretching across planets and star systems. To them, their power was absolute, and no one dared challenge their reign. The top dogs were tall, strong, and relentless. Their kind was built for war, and they had conquered many worlds, one after another. Their ships filled the skies like dark shadows, their soldiers marching in perfect unison. Every planet that fell under their control was forced to follow their strict laws. Resistance was always crushed, and any who dared rise against them were swiftly eliminated. They had no rivals, no enemies who could stand against their overwhelming strength. The top dogs were a proud species. They believed that their power was a gift, and they were the chosen rulers of the galaxy. They thought that no one could ever challenge them, and for a long time, they were right. No one dared to question their rule, and no one even tried to resist. In the heart of their empire was their homeworld, a planet known as Varthok. The cities of Varthok were grand, filled with towering buildings and massive statues honoring their past victories. The top dogs had technology far beyond anything the universe had ever seen. They had weapons capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single shot. Their ships were faster than the speed of light, and their armies were unmatched in both strength and skill. To them, the galaxy was a playground, and they were the unquestioned rulers. But even as the top dogs looked down upon the galaxy, there were whispers in the dark corners of the universe. Among the stars, a different kind of power was quietly rising. Humans, a species once seen as primitive and insignificant, had begun to make their presence known. At first, the top dogs dismissed them as nothing more than an inconvenience. After all, humanity was still confined to their small backward corner of the universe. They had barely advanced beyond their home planet, Earth, and the top dogs thought it would be easy to crush them if they ever became a problem. However, as time passed, the top dogs began to realize that humans were not so easily dismissed. They had watched as humanity slowly spread across the stars, colonizing new planets and establishing themselves as a growing force. The humans were resourceful, their technology advancing at a rapid pace. They were quick learners, constantly improving and adapting. And though they were far from as powerful as the top dogs, there was something about the humans that made them dangerous. The top dogs noticed this change, but they did not act quickly enough. They were too confident in their own superiority. They believed that no matter how much humans advanced, they would always be weak in comparison to the might of the top dogs. But what they didn't understand was the human spirit. Humans did not simply submit to power. They fought, they learned, and they adapted in ways that no other species ever could. One particular human, a young scientist named Dr. Elena Hargrave, played a key role in this unseen rise. She had long studied the ancient technology left behind by lost civilizations across the stars. Dr. Hargrave, along with her team, had unlocked the secrets of long-forgotten technologies, some of which were even older than the top dogs themselves. She discovered blueprints for weapons that could rival the strength of the top dogs. And with her knowledge, she set about constructing these weapons in secret, knowing that one day the time would come when humanity would need them. But for now, the top dogs were unaware of the growing storm. They were too busy celebrating their victories, too consumed with their arrogance, to see the humans' growing influence. They still saw themselves as the rulers of the universe, invincible and all-powerful. And why wouldn't they? They had crushed countless species before and made entire star systems bow to their will. As the years went by, the top dogs continued their reign, expanding their empire further. They turned their attention to Earth, seeing it as nothing more than a small, insignificant planet in a faraway part of the galaxy. The humans were no threat to them, and so they continued their conquest without fear. They sent fleets of warships to Earth, ready to dominate and bring the planet under their control. But what they didn't know was that the humans had already anticipated this attack. The top dogs had underestimated humanity. They thought their strength was enough to crush any opposition, but what they didn't count on was the will of the human race. They had no idea that the humans were preparing to challenge them in ways that would completely change the balance of power in the galaxy. The stage was set, and a new chapter in the galaxy's history was about to begin. One that would see the rise of a species thought to be weak and insignificant, but in truth was more than capable of bringing down the mighty top dogs. As the humans prepared for their inevitable confrontation with the top dogs, they knew they were facing an uphill battle. The top dogs were powerful, ruthless, and relentless. But the humans had something the top dogs lacked: unity, creativity, and a burning desire for freedom. The time for the top dogs to rule was coming to an end, and the humans were ready to fight for their place in the stars. Humanity's hidden strength. The top dogs were a species born for war, their strength unmatched across the galaxy. Yet in the shadows of their mighty empire, an unseen force was quietly preparing. Humanity, once a small, insignificant race confined to a single planet, was now spreading its influence across the stars. The top dogs had dismissed them for years, thinking that their primitive technologies and scattered colonies made them no threat. But as the years went on, humanity began to change. While the top dogs focused on expanding their empire, humans worked silently in the background, perfecting their technologies. Dr. Elena Hargrave, the brilliant scientist from Earth, had been leading the charge. She was obsessed with unlocking the secrets of ancient technologies, some of which were thousands of years older than the top dogs themselves. After years of research, Dr. Hargrave had successfully decoded alien blueprints left behind by civilizations long forgotten. These blueprints revealed technology far beyond anything the top dogs had ever seen. The technology humans had discovered was not just for war, it was for survival. Humans were never going to defeat the top dogs by brute strength alone. Instead, they had to think differently. They needed to develop weapons that could exploit the weaknesses of the top dogs and their arrogant overconfidence. Using the ancient technology, humans began to build weapons that could target the vulnerable spots in the top dogs' defense systems. These weapons were not powerful in the traditional sense, but they were designed to be unpredictable, to catch the top dogs off guard. Across the galaxy, humanity's reach was growing. Human colonies were expanding, and each new planet they settled on was a stepping stone toward building an army strong enough to challenge the top dogs. The humans knew that their strength lay in their unity. Where the top dogs had relied on their individual power and military might, humans depended on working together, sharing knowledge, and adapting to new situations. But the top dogs were still too focused on their empire building to notice the threat. They continued their reign of conquest, crushing anyone who dared to oppose them. Their arrogance grew with every victory. Their leaders, cloaked in their royal citadels, laughed at the idea of humanity becoming a real threat. They could not fathom that such a small, unimportant race would dare to stand against them. After all, humans had always been considered weak and divided. To the top dogs, it was a joke. And yet, beneath their feet, the groundwork for a massive change was being laid. While the top dogs celebrated their victories, the human resistance was quietly gaining strength. Across Earth, and on many human colonies, whispers spread of a new weapon. A weapon that could change everything. A weapon designed not just to fight the top dogs, but to bring them to their knees. The first of these weapons was called the arc cannon. Designed to fire beams of concentrated energy capable of disabling entire fleets of ships, the arc cannon was humanity's answer to the overwhelming firepower of the top dogs. But the arc cannon alone wouldn't be enough. Humans needed something more, something that could turn the tide of battle in their favor. It wasn't just about weapons, it was about strategy, about using their environment and technology in ways the top dogs could never predict. The humans knew that their first strike had to be decisive. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. They needed to catch the top dogs off guard, while they still thought of humans as nothing more than an afterthought. And so, they began to prepare. Dr. Hargrave and her team worked around the clock, developing new technologies. In underground labs, hidden deep within the mountains of Earth, they tested prototype weapons. They designed specialized ships that could move faster and more unpredictably than any of the top dogs' warships. These ships were made to be stealthy, their designs based on the same ancient technology that had given the top dogs their advantage. But the human ships would be faster and more versatile, able to outmaneuver anything the top dogs could throw at them. While the humans worked in secret, the top dogs continued to underestimate them. They made light of the reports that suggested humans were becoming more organized. They laughed off rumors that human colonies were building armies, developing new weapons, and preparing for war. In their minds, the top dogs had no real competition. They were the rulers of the universe. Who could possibly stand in their way? As time went on, the top dogs began to notice the occasional skirmish with human colonies, but they dismissed these incidents as small rebellions. They assumed that the humans, scattered across different star systems, lacked the resources to pose any real danger. They believed that their vast fleets could easily crush any rebellion, no matter how organized. But what the top dogs didn't realize was that the humans were not rebelling in the traditional sense. They were building an army, piece by piece, preparing for a battle the top dogs could never have predicted. Dr. Hargrave's plan was clear. Humanity would strike first. They would use their new technology to weaken the top dogs' strongest defenses before they could even retaliate. The first strike would come as a shock, a sudden, devastating attack that would leave the top dogs reeling. It would be a warning to them. The time of their unchallenged rule was over. The top dogs, confident in their superiority, continued to move forward with their conquests, unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. As they tightened their grip on the galaxy, they remained blissfully ignorant of the revolution growing in the shadows. Humanity was coming, and they were preparing to fight back in ways the top dogs could never have imagined. The first strike. The top dogs had never considered the possibility that they might lose. For centuries, they had expanded their empire with brutal force, their power unmatched. They had crushed every race that dared to challenge them, their fleets always emerging victorious, their armies always overwhelming. But this time, something was different. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, humanity had been preparing. They had spent years in secret, developing technologies that the top dogs could never have predicted. While the alien empire continued its unrelenting campaign of conquest, humanity had been silently sharpening its claws, preparing to strike when the time was right. That time had come. The first strike was not a grand battle with a massive fleet. It wasn't an all-out assault on the top dog's homeworld. No, it was something far subtler, far more devastating. Humanity's first move was a surprise attack on one of the top dog's most critical supply routes, a series of trade routes that linked their star systems together. It was an area heavily guarded, a vital lifeline for the Empire's continued expansion. The top dogs had thought it was impenetrable. They had underestimated the humans' ability to fight back. In the dead of space, a single human warship, known as the Shadow Blade, slipped through the defenses unnoticed. It was a small, stealthy vessel designed to avoid detection by the top dog's powerful sensors. The Shadow Blade was equipped with a new weapon, one that the top dogs had never seen before, a prototype beam cannon capable of disabling enemy ships at long range. The ship's captain, Commander Sarah Hayes, was a seasoned veteran. She had seen the rise of the top dogs firsthand and had grown tired of watching her people suffer under their oppressive rule. Now, with humanity's new weapon at her disposal, she had one mission: to strike the first blow and show the galaxy that humanity was no longer weak. The attack began with a single shot. The shadow blade appeared out of nowhere, slipping past the enemy's defenses and firing its beam cannon. The blast hit the lead ship in the top dog's convoy, and in an instant, it was disabled, drifting helplessly in space. The ship's shields were down, its engines destroyed. The top dogs had no idea what hit them. The convoy quickly descended into chaos. The remaining ships attempted to retaliate, but they were too slow. The shadow blade was already moving again, its engines humming as it vanished back into the depths of space. Commander Hayes didn't stick around to enjoy the destruction. She knew that top dogs would retaliate soon. They would come looking for her, looking for the humans who had dared to strike first. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. The first strike had been successful, and humanity had sent a clear message. They were no longer the weak, helpless species the top dogs thought they were. The attack on the supply route was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, the top dogs scrambled to respond. They had lost valuable resources, and their once unimpenetrable supply lines were now vulnerable. For the first time in centuries, they found themselves on the defensive. They had never faced an enemy who could strike so quickly and so precisely. Humanity had caught them off guard, and now the top dogs were unsure of what to expect next. At the heart of the top dog's empire, panic began to set in. The leaders of the empire convened in their war rooms, discussing the unexpected assault. How could a species as weak as humanity have pulled this off? What had they missed? The top dogs prided themselves on their intelligence and their ability to predict the moves of their enemies. But this time, they had been wrong. They quickly realized that the humans weren't just striking randomly. This wasn't a single act of rebellion. It was a calculated move, a warning. Humanity had the means to cripple their empire, to destroy their most vital resources. The top dogs knew that they needed to retaliate, and they needed to do it quickly. But they didn't know how far the humans had already advanced. They didn't know what other surprises humanity had in store. Commander Hayes' strike had accomplished more than just disabling a few ships. It had shaken the very foundations of the top dog's confidence. The once dominant empire now found itself uncertain. How long could they continue their reign of terror if humanity was capable of this level of precision? How long before their entire empire came crashing down? Meanwhile, on Earth and in the colonies, humanity was on edge. The success of the first strike had boosted morale, but they knew it was only the beginning. The top dogs would retaliate, and when they did, the humans would need to be ready. They couldn't afford to be complacent. Commander Hayes' victory had proven one thing: humanity was capable of fighting back. But now, they had to prepare for the inevitable war that would follow. The top dogs were coming, and humanity had just sent them a message. They were not afraid. They were not going to lie down and let the aliens destroy everything they had fought for. Humanity was ready to fight, to survive, and most importantly, to win. The Empire strikes back. The top dogs were furious. The shockwave from humanity's first strike echoed throughout the galaxy. The leaders of the top dog's empire were stunned by the sudden and calculated attack on their most important supply routes. Their military strategy, built on centuries of dominance, was suddenly thrown into question. How could a species they had long deemed insignificant be capable of such precision and disruption? The top dogs had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity. Now, with their empire's resources at risk, the top dogs had no choice but to retaliate. A war council was immediately convened on their capital planet, Drakkar. The leaders of the empire, a group of powerful and ruthless beings, sat in their high council chambers, their faces twisted in anger and disbelief. The emperor, a towering figure with silver scales that reflected the light of Drakkar's twin suns, slammed his fist onto the table. "We will not be humiliated like this," he growled. "These humans will learn what it means to challenge us." Despite their initial shock, the top dogs quickly mobilized. They dispatched their fleets to hunt down humanity's remaining forces, intending to crush them before their rebellion could spread further. The Empire's most elite battalion, known as the Shadow Legion, was ordered to track down the human ships responsible for the attack. Their fleet was massive, armed with the deadliest weapons the top dogs had ever created. The Shadow Legion was ruthless, efficient, and relentless. Back on Earth, Commander Sarah Hayes and her crew aboard the Shadow Blade were preparing for the inevitable counterattack. They knew it was only a matter of time before the top dogs came looking for them. The first strike had been successful, but that was just the opening move. Now, humanity had to hold their ground. Commander Hayes gathered her team in the war room of the Shadow Blade, a sleek, advanced warship designed for stealth and speed. It was one of the few human vessels capable of escaping the notice of the top dogs' advanced sensors. Their best chance of survival, and possibly victory, was to remain hidden until they could make their next move. "We've stirred the hornet's nest," Commander Hayes said, her voice cold and determined. "The top dogs will come for us. We need to be ready." Her team nodded in agreement. They were all aware of the stakes. Humanity had never faced an enemy like the top dogs. Their massive fleets, devastating weapons, and overwhelming numbers made them an almost unstoppable force. But humanity had a secret advantage: their adaptability. Where the top dogs relied on brute strength and arrogance, humans fought with cunning and determination. The top dogs could destroy a fleet, but they couldn't destroy humanity's will to survive. The plan was simple: keep moving, keep striking where the top dogs least expected, and gather more support from other human colonies. The fight wasn't just about winning battles. It was about wearing down the enemy's confidence and resources. If humanity could cause enough damage to the top dogs' war effort, they could force a change in the balance of power. But it wouldn't be easy. The first signs of the top dogs' retaliation came within hours. Their fleet, a vast armada of warships, entered human space, and the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. A series of communications were intercepted, revealing the extent of their anger. The top dogs were not going to let humanity's small victory stand. They were determined to crush this rebellion, no matter the cost. But humanity was already moving. Using their new technologies, human ships jumped between star systems with unprecedented speed, striking where the top dogs least expected. It was a cat and mouse game, and humanity was proving to be far more elusive than the top dogs had anticipated. Commander Hayes ordered a small, covert team to infiltrate a major top dog supply base on a distant planet. The mission was risky, but it was necessary. If they could sabotage the base and cripple their supply lines even further, the top dogs would be forced to divert resources away from their offensive. They would slow the Empire's advance, buying precious time for the human resistance to grow. The team, led by Captain Jack Montgomery, was ready. They boarded a small stealth ship, outfitted with the latest in cloaking technology. Their objective was clear: infiltrate the top dog's heavily guarded base, plant explosives on key infrastructure, and get out undetected. But even with all their advanced technology, the mission would not be easy. The top dogs were known for their security measures, and their forces were growing more vigilant by the day. The team would need to be quick, quiet, and efficient, or else they would become another casualty in the growing war. As Captain Montgomery and his team infiltrated the base, tensions mounted. The enemy forces were everywhere, and the slightest misstep could alert them to the humans' presence. But the human team was well trained, and their determination to fight back was stronger than ever. They planted the explosives, sabotaged communications, and prepared for their escape, knowing that once they activated the charges, all hell would break loose. Back on the Shadow Blade, Commander Hayes received the transmission. The mission was a success. The base was about to be destroyed. The explosion that followed sent shockwaves through the top dog's empire. The supply base, one of the most important in the galaxy, was obliterated in an instant. The top dogs would have to regroup, reassess, and divert significant resources to repairing the damage. Once again, humanity had struck at their most vulnerable point. But even as they celebrated their victory, Commander Hayes knew the war was far from over. The top dogs would retaliate with even more fury. The real battle had only just begun. A galaxy in flames. The top dogs were furious. Their empire, once a symbol of invincibility, was now under siege. Humanity, the so-called weak species they had once crushed without a second thought, was proving to be an unexpected thorn in their side. The top dogs had underestimated their enemy, and now they were paying the price. Commander Sarah Hayes watched from the bridge of this shadow blade as the latest transmission came in. The top dogs had launched a full-scale offensive to avenge their recent losses. Their fleets, massive and overwhelming, were sweeping across human space with terrifying speed. Humanity had dealt a few painful blows, but now the top dogs were coming with everything they had. "Brace yourselves," Commander Hayes said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "This is only going to get worse before it gets better. We need to stay one step ahead." The Shadow Blade was one of humanity's most advanced ships, designed to be fast, stealthy, and nearly invisible to enemy sensors. But even the Shadow Blade couldn't stand up to the full might of the top dog's fleet. Their ships were enormous, with weapons capable of obliterating entire planets. A single fleet could wipe out a colony in the blink of an eye. Humanity's forces were smaller, scattered, and less equipped for a prolonged war. But they had something the top dogs didn't: a fire in their hearts, a relentless desire to survive, and the will to fight for their future. And that's what had kept them going, even as the galaxy burned around them. The war had taken a toll on both sides. The top dogs, despite their superior technology and numbers, had suffered significant losses. Their once imposing fleets were now being picked apart, piece by piece, as humanity used hit-and-run tactics to whittle down their power. But the top dogs were not ready to surrender. They were too proud, too arrogant, and too determined to crush this rebellion once and for all. On the front lines, human ships engaged the enemy in a series of intense battles. The top dogs came at them with everything: fighters, warships, and massive dreadnoughts that towered over human vessels. But humanity had learned from their mistakes. They adapted quickly, using their smaller, faster ships to their advantage. They would engage the enemy, hit hard, and retreat before the top dogs could respond. Meanwhile, Commander Hayes worked tirelessly to coordinate the efforts of the resistance. She knew they couldn't fight the top dogs in a direct confrontation, at least not yet. The only way to win this war was through strategy, deception, and staying one step ahead of their enemies. They had to make the top dogs believe they were everywhere, that humanity's forces were stronger than they really were. They needed to break the top dogs' morale before they broke humanity's resolve. But as the fighting escalated, it became clear that the top dogs were growing desperate. They launched a massive assault on Earth itself, aiming to crush the heart of humanity's resistance once and for all. It was a calculated move, a way to prove that no rebellion, no matter how small, could stand against the might of their empire. The fleet that descended upon Earth was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The top dogs had assembled their largest force, a vast armada of warships that blocked out the sun. The battle for Earth would decide the fate of the war and humanity's survival. On the ground, the people of Earth were preparing for the inevitable. The cities had been fortified, and every able-bodied person was being called into service. Humanity's military forces were already stretched thin, but the citizens were ready to fight. They had come to realize that the survival of their species depended on their ability to stand united against the empire that sought to destroy them. The day the top dogs arrived, it was like the sky itself was on fire. Massive warships hovered above Earth's atmosphere, and the ground shook with the tremors of their arrival. The people of Earth watched in horror as their once untouchable world became the target of the top dog's wrath. But even in the face of annihilation, humanity refused to surrender. The resistance fighters on Earth fought back with everything they had, launching guerrilla attacks on the enemy's forces, disrupting their landings, and sabotaging their technology. Commander Hayes, now leading the charge from the Shadow Blade, coordinated the final desperate push to protect Earth from the overwhelming force descending upon them. It was a battle like no other, a fight for survival against an empire that had never known defeat. Humanity was battered, outnumbered, and on the brink of destruction, but their spirit remained unbroken. Every human who fought, whether in space or on the ground, did so with the knowledge that this was the last stand. If they failed, their species would be wiped from existence. But just when all hope seemed lost, something unexpected happened. As the top dogs continued their relentless assault, their massive flagship, a terrifying dreadnought known as the Endbringer, was suddenly struck by a series of unknown explosions. The ship's systems began to fail, and it was forced to retreat, its massive size now a liability rather than an advantage. It was a blow to their pride, a sign that humanity had found a way to fight back against the might of their empire. The tide of battle had shifted. The final stand. The battle for Earth had reached a boiling point. The sky above was filled with the roar of massive top dogs' warships and the desperate defiance of humanity's fleet. The top dogs had pushed their empire's full might toward Earth's surface, hoping to crush humanity's resistance once and for all. But the unexpected had happened. The top dog's flagship, the Endbringer, had been forced into retreat, and now humanity had a small window of opportunity to strike back. On the surface of Earth, Commander Sarah Hayes stood on the command bridge of the Shadow Blade, eyes locked on the monitors that displayed the chaos of battle. She had spent years preparing for this moment, but even she couldn't predict what the final assault would bring. It was now or never. The survival of humanity depended on the actions of every soldier, every civilian, every rebel who had come to stand with them. "We need to make this count," Sarah said, her voice firm. "This is our chance. We have one shot to drive them back and cripple their fleet. If we fail, Earth falls, and the entire human race with it." The crew around her nodded in solemn agreement. They had seen the destruction, heard the cries of those who had already fallen, and witnessed the devastation the top dogs had caused. But now they had an opening, an opportunity to finally turn the tide. The top dogs' fleet was regrouping, recovering from the shock of losing their flagship, and their commanders were desperate to regain control. Commander Hayes knew that this was a rare moment of weakness. Humanity's resistance forces, though small and scattered, had been emboldened by the destruction of the Endbringer. Now, with their momentum growing, they launched their final offensive. Hundreds of human ships, smaller, faster, and far more nimble than the top dog's massive dreadnoughts, moved in unison, their objective clear: take down the remaining key targets of the top dog's fleet. The mission was risky, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. Every strike had to be precise, every maneuver calculated. One wrong move and the remaining forces could easily crush the rebellion. Meanwhile, on the ground, the people of Earth were holding their breath. Across the planet, the last remaining human cities were preparing for the worst. The top dogs would strike at the heart of Earth's major population centers if they thought it would break humanity's will. But humanity's response was even fiercer than expected. Armed resistance fighters dug in, with weapons made from whatever they could scavenge. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their very survival. The top dogs began their final assault on Earth's surface. Massive warships, hundreds of meters long, fired their deadly weapons down toward the planet. But humanity wasn't going down quietly. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, Earth's defenses fought back with a ferocity that stunned the top dogs. But it wasn't enough to stop the invasion completely. The top dogs' forces were overwhelming, and they had already begun their descent. It was a race against time. Humanity's forces on Earth could only delay them for so long before they would be overrun. The city walls crumbled as wave after wave of top dogs' ground forces marched forward, their weapons destroying everything in their path. Yet, there was still hope. Above Earth, the Shadow Blade and the rest of humanity's fleet fought a desperate battle, taking the fight straight to the heart of the Top Dog's invasion. Human ships, despite their size disadvantage, darted through enemy fire, using their advanced technology to avoid capture. The coordination of the fleet was flawless. Every fighter, every cruiser, every ship moved in perfect harmony. It was a testament to humanity's resolve and their will to survive. As the final battle raged above, Commander Hayes watched as her crew and the human fleet pressed deeper into the Top Dog's lines. Their objective was clear: destroy the core of the Top Dog's command system, disrupt their ability to launch further strikes, and cripple their forces once and for all. The fight was brutal. There were moments when it seemed like humanity would break, when the Top Dogs pushed too hard and too fast. The resistance lost ships, many of them. Still, the humans pushed on. For every human vessel that was lost, the Top Dogs lost a dozen more. They were not used to this kind of tenacity. The Top Dog's fleet was slowly but surely losing its edge. Just when it seemed like the Top Dogs might pull back and regroup, something extraordinary happened. The human ships, with Commander Hayes at the helm of the Shadow Blade, struck directly at the Top Dog's command center, targeting the heart of their operations. The Top Dog's flagship, the symbol of their dominance, was disabled in a precise strike. This was no accident. It was calculated cold, and it sent shockwaves through the enemy's ranks. The empire that had once seemed unstoppable was now crumbling from within. Back on Earth, the invasion began to falter. The Top Dog's forces, now cut off from their command center, were confused and disorganized. Humanity's resistance launched their final strike, pushing the Top Dogs back. The tables had turned, and the invaders found themselves retreating for the first time in centuries. However, victory didn't come easy. Humanity paid a heavy price. Cities lay in ruins, and countless lives had been lost in the struggle. But as the last of the Top Dog's forces withdrew, Commander Hayes and her crew knew one thing: they had won. Against all odds, humanity had fought back. They had stood strong and had driven the Top Dogs out of their world. The galaxy would never be the same. The shattered empire and new beginnings. The aftermath of the battle was almost as devastating as the war itself. Earth, though spared from total annihilation, bore the scars of a conflict unlike anything humanity had ever known. The sky, once filled with the terrifying shadows of Top Dog's warships, was now eerily quiet. The surface of the planet, marred by bomb craters and the remnants of destroyed cities, told the tale of an invasion that had nearly succeeded in ending the human race. But amidst the destruction, there was hope. Commander Sarah Hayes stood at the summit of what had once been the grandest tower in the capital city. Below her, human forces moved through the ruins, securing the last remnants of Top Dog's forces that had failed to retreat in time. In the distance, the horizon seemed to glow with the dawn of a new era, a dawn that had come at a great cost. The victory had not been easy. The Top Dogs had fallen, their once great empire reduced to smoldering ruins. Their forces had been broken, their pride shattered. No longer could they call themselves the rulers of the galaxy. The rebellion, led by humanity's fierce resistance, had succeeded in toppling the mighty empire that had oppressed them for so long. Yet the cost was undeniable. Entire cities had been leveled, millions had died, and the survivors had lost everything: family, homes, and a sense of normalcy. "Commander, we've secured the last of their command ships. They're gone." A voice broke through Sarah's thoughts. It was Lieutenant Marcus, her trusted second-in-command. He was standing next to her, looking out at the horizon, his expression grim. "Is it really over?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with exhaustion and uncertainty. The war had taken everything from them, and now that it was over, the burden of rebuilding seemed almost as impossible as defeating the Top Dogs had been. Marcus nodded. "They won't come back. Not in the same way. We've broken their leadership, And without that, their empire will crumble. They're scattered across the galaxy, leaderless, vulnerable. Sarah turned to him, her expression hardening. But we can't let our guard down. They may be defeated, but their remnants will regroup. We have to be ready for what comes next. The war is over, but the galaxy still needs to heal. It was true. The top dogs might have been driven off Earth, but they were not completely gone. Their empire, now fractured, still posed a threat to humanity and the other races of the galaxy. Their retreat would only be temporary. They would rebuild, lick their wounds, and come back in search of revenge. But humanity had proven something important in this conflict. They would not be cowed, they would not be wiped out, and they would fight for their survival. The people of Earth, scared and tired, knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The human race had endured the worst, and now they had a chance to rebuild. But that came with its own challenges. Cities needed to be rebuilt, governments had to be restored, and the survivors had to deal with the grief of their losses. But Sarah, ever the strategist, knew one thing. They had to act swiftly. The galaxy was in chaos, and if humanity was to ensure its future, they needed to take control of their destiny. The resources left behind by the top dogs were vast, and their technology was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It could be the key to rebuilding faster than anyone could have imagined, but it also had the potential to cause even greater destruction if misused. We need to rebuild, but we must also stay vigilant, Sarah declared, her voice firm. We're not the only ones in this galaxy who can fight for power. We've learned the hard way that complacency is our greatest enemy. We have to form new alliances, keep pushing forward, and make sure we never lose sight of what we're fighting for. The galaxy was a vast, untamed place, and though humanity had driven back the top dogs, their fight was far from over. The remnants of the alien empire would scatter, but that didn't mean the universe would suddenly become peaceful. Other factions, older, powerful, and more ruthless, would likely rise from the ashes, eager to claim the power left behind by the top dogs. Humanity needed to make its mark in this new era, to forge alliances, and to take control of its future before another empire rose to take the place of the fallen one. As Sarah stood there, looking out over the ruins of Earth, she saw not just devastation, but the flicker of hope. Humanity had endured. They had proven that even the mightiest of empires could fall, and that against all odds, the will to survive could turn the tide of war. It wasn't just about victory anymore. It was about what they would do with that victory. Humanity now had the opportunity to shape their future, and they would not waste it. But the galaxy was still a dangerous place. The victory over the top dogs had not brought peace, but it had created the possibility for something better. Humanity had learned valuable lessons about strength, unity, and the importance of never backing down. The war was over. The top dogs were gone, but the real battle for the galaxy's future was just beginning.